Okay, got a couple people missing today, so and next hour. So, uh, thank you to those who performed and sang at mass today. So yesterday I just kind of introduced Operation Barbarossa for a minute, okay, and I told you that it was going to be, his era, and I think I also alluded to the fact that it's also going to be very cold. Did I mention that? Okay, so look at the date, June 22nd. I looked this up 4th hour. Napoleon actually left on June 24th, 1812. So it was more than 100 years before, about 130. Okay, and now obviously Hitler's got to be confident with Blitzkrieg. Like what he was able to do in Europe was unprecedented. So he thought he could leave. Now, remember, he's in Poland. Yes, his armies, he can get them to Poland, and then he's going to have to invade. Now, it's kind of interesting. Stalin knew this was coming. Okay? And if you read about this, it's really interesting because his generals are trying to warn Stalin, like, we got to get more troops up to the front. And Stalin's like, no, I have a plan. I got this, leave me alone. And they just kept pestering Stalin. He ended up killing some of his top generals because they wouldn't shut up about it. Okay? So his plan was to embrace the enemy. Let them come. Let them come. Now, if you look at the weather, and I showed you guys how far north Moscow is. So if you're going to take Russia, you've got to take Moscow. Okay? So you see how far north it is. And did I talk about the jet stream yesterday? You know, the wind's always blowing out of the north and south here. So what happens in North America, guys, is the jet stream goes like this, right through the heart of the United States. And then it goes like this, right here. And it comes down through here. Okay? That's how it works. Okay? Now, there's one city in the United States that is not in the mountains, that is notorious for a ton of snow. Not in the mountains, a ton of snow. It's not uncommon for them to get 22 inches, 28 inches in a snowfall. What am I talking about? In the United States, one city, notorious, their snowplow budget is incredibly huge. Okay? I think they had to move a playoff game against the Chiefs a couple of years ago because there was so much snow. Buffalo, New York. Okay? So Buffalo, New York sits right here on Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. You got Lake Huron here. They get what's called lake effect snow. So all that moisture goes up into the air and comes right back down in the form of snow. Okay? Moscow has the Baltic and Norwegian Sea effect. All that moisture, okay? Now, pay attention here. Is it colder in Seattle in the winter than it is in Wichita, which is further south? No, it's not. Because of the warmth of the ocean over here, Seattle doesn't get that cold. Okay? We do. Yes? So, that happens here, guys. They get the same kind of effect we get in Wichita, but they're a lot further north. Okay? So what'd you find?
Germans were invading Russia. It was negative 40 degrees as they approached Moscow.
40? Yeah. Negative 40 degrees. Guys, it was so cold in Russia. This is where you guys are supposed to say, how cold was it? It was so cold in Russia, it was negative 40 degrees. Okay? It was so cold in Russia that the German tanks, the treads of their tanks, literally froze to the ground. It was so cold in Russia that the oil in the tanks froze. That's freaking cold. It was so cold in Russia that when you got shot and you started to bleed, it froze. That's how cold it was. Now, they leave Russia, or they leave Poland. Hey, this thing is driving me crazy. All right, E, you're going up. You're going up. Okay, you're going up. Stay. That's good. Okay. So, they're in Poland. They got to go in, okay? The Russians are going to fight, but they're not putting everything they have on the front. So, as the weeks and months go on, these soldiers are dressed in summer uniforms. It's June. Okay, so think about our weather. July it's hot, August it's hot. Okay, September starts to cool off. Now, if you're up in northern Canada, September, October, it's starting to get cold. November, it's really cold. By the time December, you're freezing your butts off. Okay, so here go the Germans. Few notes there. Now, as the Russians retreat, you guys might know this. They use a tactic called what? Scorched earth. So this is like going back, pulling back from Ukraine, where Ukraine is now, okay? When the Russians pull back, they destroy anything that the German army can use as food. They'll poison drinking water sources. They will burn shelters, anything the Germans can use for shelter. What does this do to the Russian people? See, guys, most of the Russian population lives in this region. So as the Russian army destroys all this, what is going to happen to the Russian civilians? They're going to starve. They're going to freeze to death. Millions of them, guys. Millions of them. So when we talk about Russian casualties and death in World War II, guys, between 20 and 25 million. Million. You know how many Americans are going to die in World War II? They might know the number. It's about 400,000. This, guys, is tragic. Okay? So the scorched earth, let me pull up a map for you real quick. Okay? I'm just going to go to the next slide for a second. Okay, so you can see Operation Barbarossa here. Okay? So here's Kyiv, Ukraine. Okay? Moscow's up here. So these are pockets of heavy fighting. Okay? With lots of casualties. Okay? So you can see they start pulling back. By the time you get to the end of the year, through December, the Germans are paralyzed. They cannot continue on. Okay? The supply lines they're having the supplies all the way back from Poland, all the way out here, with food and fuel, clothing, trying to get stuff to the front. So they're going to actually get within about 15 miles of Moscow, and they're going to have to stop. Now, one of the smart things Stalin did is he moved the manufacturing of his military stuff further out here, out of the reach of the Luftwaffe, out of the reach of the German Air Force. Okay, so over that winter, Stalin has almost an unlimited amount of population to pull from in the East, just pulling people in, putting them in uniform, and throwing them into the fight. Okay, so while the Germans paused, Russians are kind of used to this weather. Okay, they live here, and so they're more prepared for this. So when the spring thaw comes, the fighting will resume, and it will be fierce. Okay, the Germans will never take Moscow. Now, in this further south and further east, the Germans are going to push down here. And there's a city on the river, the Volga River. There's a city on the Volga called what? Come on, you know this one. It's a city that bears the leader's name, Stalingrad. Okay, let me show you where it is on this map. I don't have it on this one. So what the Germans are trying to do, today this is called Volgograd. Okay, back then it was called Stalingrad. Do you think Hitler wants to take Stalingrad? Oh yeah. Do you think Stalin wants to give up Stalingrad? I don't think so. Okay, so as the Germans push down this region, what is over here? The oil fields of the Middle East. Hitler wants to get to these oil fields and take them. Now, he's also going to be in North Africa pushing this direction as well to the Suez Canal. Now, the British are in Egypt, so they're going to try and hold here, while the Russians are trying to hold here. So this is 1941 into 1942. Right? The Americans, for our part, which I don't have notes on the Americans getting involved in this, until November of 42, the Americans are going to be in North Africa. So a full year from this, or more. That's June of 41, okay? So November of 42, Americans are going to get involved here, okay? So as they're pushing here, Stalin's going to throw everything he has at the Germans. Battle of Stalingrad, which is one of the most important battles of the entire war. Guys, if you were to come to this planet from another planet, say you were from Mars, okay, and you showed up and you said, will you teach me about World War II, this Martian does? This is what you would teach them. This battle right here. More people will fight in this battle out here. More people will die in this battle out here than in any other part of the war. In about a 2-year period, okay, millions, tens of millions of people are going to die, okay? So, the scorched earth practice, and then as the Germans push further out towards Stalingrad, they're going to be able to bring the Luftwaffe with them out here, okay? So we'll talk about some of the other military techniques here. Let me go back to the notes. Okay. So the Germans were successful early. Stalin pulled back, scorched earth, 15 miles, and the Germans are going to have to wait for warmer weather. Okay. Now this is a U.S. history class, not a Russian history class. So I'm going to, I'm obviously spending a little bit of time on this. What time does this class end? Okay. Why don't I just do this on Monday? I will start the class. There's a video clip I want to show you guys. Probably about 10, 15 minutes of video. A long time ago, probably 20 years ago, I was reading a book called The War of the Rats. It was a World War II book. And I thought it was fiction. And it is somewhat fiction, but it's based on a true story. And it's about the Battle of Stalingrad. And a few years later, and it's really focuses on snipers in the Battle of Stalingrad. Okay, and it's about a Russian sniper named Vasily Zaitsev. Vasily Zaitsev was a farm boy. He had learned to hunt. He would hunt wolves and bears and stuff like that out in eastern Russia. His grandfather taught him how to shoot. And so when he shows up in Stalingrad, he proves himself early as a really good shot. They put him into the snipers in Stalingrad. And so what the Russian snipers did is they focused on German officers. And they would take out German officers, really destroying the morale of the Germans. Nobody wanted to replace the officer that just got killed. So the Germans are up in arms about this. So they bring in their top sniper, the guy that teaches at the sniper school, to hunt down this Russian sniper. And that's what this book is about. And it's based on a true story. And a few years later, about 10 years later, I see a trailer for a movie. I'm like, that sounds like that book I read, War of the Rats. Well, they changed the name of the book, of the movie, to Enemy at the Gates. Have you guys seen this? Okay. Jude Law, ladies. Jude Law. I don't know who he is. British actor. Blue eyes. Nice chin. Good looking fella. Okay. He plays the Russian. Ed Harris, who's you'll recognize from a bunch of movies. Now, you won't see him in the clip I show you, but you'll want to watch the movie after I show you this video clip. Okay. So I'll start with that since I'm recording this today. If I show that clip, I got to shut everything down. So I'll start with that on Monday. Okay, and I got to hook up the DVD stuff. So good. All right. So we can wrap a little bit more about the Battle of Stalingrad. There's some photos here. This just shows German tanks in the snow. Okay. A little bit later in the war, guys, we're going to talk about the Battle of the Bulge that the United States is involved in. And guys, it was really cold in the Battle of the Bulge. It was not this cold. 40 below, guys. You've been outside when it's 0, probably, maybe -2 or 3 or 4 degrees. Can you imagine? I mean, guys. So it was really hard on people. The Russian people, like, I've read stories about how in this region of Russia, they were literally, Russian civilians were digging holes and trying to dig holes in the ground just to have some shelter. Okay? God, so bad. Awful. Okay, so I'm going to move back. Talk about what's happening with the United States, okay? So the Germans, with their U-boats, are going to step up the warfare in the Atlantic. We're actually going to start using American convoys, American merchant ships. These are merchant marines. These are volunteers. I'll go on the ship and, carry a gun or fire a gun, try and help get these supplies across, okay? And we're going to start using American Navy. So both cargo and Navy ships for the United States. On September 4th, 1941, the USS Greer is attacked. Okay. This is going to kill American sailors. Okay. FDR ordered our ships, use these German ships, sink them. Okay. So we've got a war going on in the Atlantic. It's an undeclared war. In October, 2 more American vessels are attacked, many killed, undeclared war in the Atlantic. Okay, so if you heard of the Merchant Marines, kind of reminds me of another movie. Okay, any guys see the movie called Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks? Tom Hanks is Captain Phillips. He's on a cargo ship in the Indian Ocean, off the coast of Somalia. Okay. So you guys know where Somalia is here, the Horn of Africa. And it's a big cargo ship filled with oil. And what was taking place in the 90s, still to this day taking place, is you have these pirates in Somalia. that will try to board these big cargo ships and hold the crew of those ships hostage. Okay, so they made a movie about what happened to this one ship. It's based on a true story. And Captain Phillips is trying to deal with these Somali pirates. Today, those cargo ships are all armed, okay, to prevent pirates from boarding those ships. Okay, so it's violence, okay, but you can YouTube American cargo ships versus Somali pirates and watch them defend their cargo ships. Okay. It's pretty crazy. Okay. I mean, they'll get on these fast boats, small boats, these pirates, these fast, small boats, and they'll try and sneak up and board these ships and take hostage. Okay. So, Captain Phillips, pretty good movie. You guys said, what time? 30? Okay, let's check out what's going on in the Pacific. Okay, so the Japanese, their goal, they don't talk about this like publicly, but their goal is what's called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. That's a mouthful. Okay. The French have been defeated in Europe. The Dutch have been defeated in Europe. Okay. The British have held on. You've got the Philippines, which is controlled by the United States. This is the Dutch East Indies. This is French Indochina, which today we would refer to as Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Laos is in the north, Cambodia in the south, the western. Vietnam's along the east coast here of this peninsula. Thailand, Burma is controlled by the British. Okay. Singapore or Malaya, this region down here, is controlled by the British. And then, of course, to the south of that, you have Australia. Okay. So you can see in 1941, before December 7th, how far the Japanese have gotten. Okay. So, I have to be careful what I touch. Okay. So, the Japanese want to shut down the Burma Road. Now, guys, we cannot, remember Lend-Lease. We're going to lend and lease supplies to the British, eventually the Russians, and the Chinese. Are we going to be able to get our Navy in here to supply the Chinese with the Japanese wreaking havoc throughout here? No. The only way to supply the Chinese is through what's called the Burma Road. Now, guys, this is an engineering marvel, the Burma Road. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is going to build a road through the jungles of Burma. There's mountains in there as well. And there's a big old mountain range right here between Burma and China called the same mountain range that Mount Everest is in. The Himalayas. Welcome to the Himalayas. It's a quote from a movie. What movie? Say it. Monsters, Inc. You guys remember that? The Yeti, Monsters, Inc. Welcome to the... Okay. So you guys did grow up watching that movie? So now, how many of you guys ever been to Pikes Peak? Switchbacks, right? All the switchbacks. Yeah, through the Himalayas. Okay, so through the jungles of Burma, across the Himalayas, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers builds this road. It's a marvel. Okay, well, the Japanese, they want to close it off. Okay, and they start to occupy French Indochina. Okay, the north first, and then the south. Okay, U.S. Responds with an all-out embargo of trade with the Japanese. No more what for the Japanese? Oil. No more oil. Okay? So, this is when the Japanese realize they need to act now against the United States because their oil supply is going to be limited. They have about a 6-month supply in reserve. Okay? So the talks begin in Japan about what they're going to do next. Okay? Eventually, guys, they will shut down the Burma. They will take Burma. Okay? Then we're going to have to start flying in supply. I'm recording.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So, hi, Mary. So I got this slide. So look at the map. Okay, look where Japan is. I didn't even touch it. Okay, but I'll touch it again. Touch it again. No. Okay. See how far they are. Okay. Before Pearl Harbor. This is 1941. This is after Pearl Harbor. Okay, what changes? Burma, Malaya, all of this, most of New Guinea, okay, and then a bunch of these island chains. Okay, so when they shut down the Burma Road, I took this picture at the World War II Museum. Okay, we're going to have to fly in supplies to Burma across the Himalayas. Now, you guys know flying over mountain ranges can be treacherous. Okay, you guys know about the Wichita State football team. You guys know about that, right? Okay, other stories that you've heard. So this became known as flying the hump, and I just wanted to talk about this. I got a few minutes. Okay, after Burma fell to the Japanese in May of '42, the Allied supply link to China was tenuous. American supplies were shipped across the Atlantic, around Africa to India, carried by rail to bases in northeastern India, and then flown in a constant shuttle over the treacherous Himalayan hump to Kunming, keeping the vital lifeline open. The routes became ominously known as the Aluminum Trail. Littered with wrecked aircraft lost to violent and unpredictable weather, mechanical failures, and enemy fighters. Okay. You guys know the story of our former coach and former helicopter pilot. What's his name, Stone Street? Chris Nordman, who was flying a helicopter in these mountains after an earthquake. Okay? And like many of these pilots, this is a C-47 right here. Okay? It's one my dad flew in the Korean War. It's one of the best aircrafts the United States ever made. This plane was in service for decades. Okay? But we lost so many of these planes. There's another former football coach named Coach Gann. Okay? Coach Gann was in the Marines for something like 36 years. His last couple years in the service, he went here looking for the remains of Americans missing in action along this aluminum trail, looking for bones. Okay, you can find the planes, the wreckage of the planes there, and then try and locate the bodies, use DNA, and bring them home to their families. Okay, so we have not forgotten these MIA. And this is not the last time I'm going to talk about this, as I show you American cemeteries in Italy and in France as well. Okay, so this became an important supply link to the Chinese, okay, to try and help our allies during the war. So when we come back next week, I'll start with that clip from the Battle of Stalingrad, and then we'll talk about Pearl Harbor, okay? And probably Tuesday, we'll watch an hour or class worth of Pearl Harbor, and then we're kind of done. Okay? So we'll probably be looking at a test next Thursday. So if you want to start prepping for that this weekend, look over the notes a little bit. Yes, ma'am?
Are you going to be fundraising the book?
I should. Get on that. Yes. Okay. I'm grading. It's supposed to rain all day today. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. Okay. I got to watch a little bit of sports in the morning. Lily's playing at 11. Buckeyes play at 11. Keep the adult beverages to a minimum so I can grade. Too much information? Okay. All right. I'll work on it. Okay. Have a good weekend. Like and subscribe.